I think we're live.
Looks like it.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to an episode of Peak Prosper Expert Interviews. My name is Scott. I'm your host today from Peak Prosper, and I'm joined by an epic, adventurous outdoorsman and just rad human being, one of my good friends, Ean Wood. Ian, welcome to the show, bro.
Thanks so much for having me, Scott. I love doing anything that involves conversation with you.
Yeah, man, I'm stoked for our chat today, and we're going to be talking about masculine and feminine energy and how as men we can create more of an emotionally balanced experience in our lives. I'm super stoked for our conversation today. But for our listeners and those that might tune in later, can you share with us a little bit about this resurrection retreat that you just were telling me about? It sounds super wild, man.
Oh, we're going straight into the depths. I love it. Yeah. So, Resurrection was a 4-day event. Just went to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 9 hours a day. It was like over 210 women and about 5 men. It
Surrounded by the
was
feminine.
surrounded by the feminine. It was led by a teacher of mine. Her name's Perry Chase. Super powerful, and this is the extreme end that I've gone to of really learning about feminine energy. The event was all about kind of going through the process of death and rebirth. So a lot to do with, she actually took us through breath work, guided visualizations of, actually visualizing ourselves in a situation where we were like about to die. And it was really powerful to feel what came up in me about like, oh, what would I think or feel right before my death? Like I actually had all this stuff come up of what I would have thought. And a lot to do with identity, like shattering identities, disconnecting from identities or roles of I am this and the world is this, and just playing that role out. So a lot of peeling back layers of ego identity and actually going through the processes of feeling like I was about to die.
Wild, man.
It was really extreme, and we'll talk about it today, but my background is really in masculine specific inner work. That's been my background for a long time, and this was just like an explosion into feminine energy, and just like being immersed in, I mean, that many women, that much energy of feminine energy was just like, it kind of tore me apart.
So, Ian, when I think of feminine energy, I think of female energy. And we were talking about this earlier. I don't even think that I can do the greatest job of describing what that energy is. Can you share with me a little bit about what feminine energy is and how I might embody it more as a man?
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, first of all, I want to separate it, and it's really hard. It can be really hard to separate in our minds that we're not talking about gender here when we talk about energy, feminine energy, masculine energy. And I think you put it on the post, is I really like the reference of yin and yang, because that goes back thousands of years, and it's really the receptive and the like expressive. So think of like the sun as being masculine, like the sun rays just beaming out, going outward, and the earth being like feminine, receiving, and everything that grows here is from the reception of the light from the sun. So in ourselves, in us, I can have my more, so the mind is very masculine because it's thinking, it's doing, it's action oriented, it's very outward. Whereas our emotions are more receptive, like something happens, we receive that information, and we feel something from it. So I think the receptivity and like is more yin, is more feminine of receiving, and then masculine is like outward, is expressive. And once again, this isn't about gender. So that's like the simplest.
Yeah, it's, while it's not about gender, I still can see the connection to my natural drive and desire to go do. whereas my
100%.
wife is more of a feeler, an emotional being, an emotional creature. And I'm definitely getting better as I go deeper into my men's work, in tapping into my emotional side and really listening to that and experiencing that fully. How did you even get into this work, Ian?
Yeah, good question. I I grew up with my dad struggled with mental health, bipolar, schizophrenic, and he was looking for as many ways as he could find to like learn about himself and figure himself out. And when I was a young boy, probably 6 or 7, my dad got into like masculine sacred inner work through a few different organizations. He was getting his alcohol dependency certification, and he learned about like men's work that was really blowing up. Robert Bly was writing powerful books. All this like masculine work was kind of matching feminine and the feminine movement. And so when I was young, my dad introduced me to the Mankind Project, which is an organization that's been around for like 30 years. And those men were coming over to my dad's house all the time. And it was just around me. So this was established kind of in relationship with my dad when I was really young. And it just kept it continued in our relationship, something we always talked about, and something that was kind of always, he was always connected to the Mankind Project. And then when I became a young adult in 21, they actually do, they call it the New Warrior Training Adventure. It's an initiation weekend. All cultures for time immemorial, when boys get to a certain age, there's like an initiation where it's like, okay, now you're a man. The dads, the older men take the boys away from the women and out of the community, and they go and they do like they have like a ceremony and kind of a training. And it's like, okay, when you leave now, it's like you're initiated into your manhood. So I went and participated in that. And as the years went on, I got more and more into the work. And as I was staffing, I started to pay attention a lot more to the content that was coming through. And there was one thing in particular that really hit me and took me on this path. Was in part of the weekend, they're getting into emotional awareness. And they talk about the limbic system in the brain. And for some reason, it really hit me on this one weekend. I really listened to what they were saying about the limbic system. And I went home and I just really geeked out on it and really saw that, wow, the limbic system, every sensation that I experience through my eyes, my ears, my mouth, whatever, is going through this part of my brain that that is responsible for a lot of my emotions before it ever goes to the rational part of my brain. And this was like what really started, that got my logical mind to think, wow, this is really important. But what it took me on was really, first learning about the emotional intelligence and this aspects of the mind, but then really realizing, wow, I'm so numb. Like my body's so numb. I'm so up in my head, like I was like doing these trainings. I was trying to understand and feel. And a lot of the emotional work is like, okay, where does that feel in your body? What color is it? What texture is it? Is it moving? Is it rigid? And I was really realizing like, wow, it's so hard for me to feel these feelings in my body. And that was really what cracked open the door to be like, okay, I really want to become more attuned to the sensations in my body, become more my body. And that kind of led me to simultaneously, my dad's wife was in sacred feminine work in an organization called Inner Yaga. And I could see that what they were doing was more in the realm of feeling body, like being attuned to how things felt. And that's just kind of slowly how I trickled that way. And I just keep going like step by step more into wanting to be a more balanced human. Yes, I'm a man right now, so I want to be a more balanced man, that I have access and I'm able to utilize both the masculine energy and the feminine energy like a tool for living here on earth.
And Ian, you just touched on so many things that resonate really powerfully with me. And I think we can talk a bit about the inner work and emotional numbness. And before we even go there, uh, in my own experience, I've found at different phases of my life, I'm actually scared of my emotions. I mean, I'm feeling things that I don't want to feel. I just, I don't want to feel a certain way. So I might bury myself in work or substances or exercising or something to avoid my human emotional
Pleasure.
experience. And only I think only becoming aware of that, like consciousness, actually waking up to the reality of my experience has empowered me with the ability to do some of this inner work to actually transform those responses to how I feel. I mean, we talk a lot about how our mind, our body is a thinking, feeling, action machine, meaning we take actions based on how we feel. Like I'll say, hey, I think I should go do this, but really I should be saying I feel like I should go do this.
Mm,
And
mm.
that numbness that I experienced all those years ago really turned me off to the emotional signals that were trying to guide me in the right direction. And
100%.
I'm curious, man, like where did your investigation into the inner work start? You know, like we talk about go do the inner work and get rid of the blocks that are holding you back from becoming the man that you're meant to be. Like, where did you even start with that journey, man?
Yeah, I have to give that one up to my dad again of just passing me books, man. Books were the thing that worked most for me when I was young. Is he was just passing me these books when I was at an age that I couldn't really comprehend, but it was just building a strong foundation and planting these seeds. And, when I turned 18 and became a young adult, I went off on my own and kind of left behind all the stuff that I did with my dad. I was just like, that's like my dad's stuff. Cool. That's what we have in our relationship. But the books always stayed with me. I was always reading, and I was pretty heady from early on. And the books were providing these perspectives consistently. I would be commercial fishing in Alaska, reading like Lama Surya Das, Seeking the Buddha Within, while I'm up smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol, commercial fishing in Alaska. It was this weird dichotomy that was happening. But on my path, it was all sorts of different things. And a lot of it was from my father, but the books were the thread that wove consistently through the story.
And Ian, your journey of the inner work hasn't even started hardly, has it? I mean, if I'm real, dude, like I feel like I'm just scratching the surface of what my inner journey is going to be like. You've said it twice now. I'm really heady. I get stuck in my head historically, and um, I have a tendency to tune to meditation and journaling and talking to amazing people like you to get out of my head. And even the work that I do is very service centric. It's designed that way to help get me out of me. And
Mm,
I'm
mm.
I would love to hear some tools, maybe some processes that you go through to help you and some of the guys that you work with get out of their head and into their human experience.
Mm, mm, mm. That really is the foundation of everything, is the awareness and the ability to be in control of what's going on in my mind. And I really like to keep it simplistic. And when I work with someone, I find out what helps them feel most present. I'll just ask, like, when do you feel most present? And most present means like your mind is in all, you're not thinking about the future, you're not thinking about other things. You're present. Like, when do you feel that way the most? And I just start with that and I say, okay, then that this feeling from that experience. Now let's try to expand that into other areas of your life. And I know you just read Atomic Habits. I am super focused on creating the habit. It doesn't matter how long, but every single day to I use my phone because I think a timer is important. But I say it doesn't matter how long, because the mind will come up with the story there is in time. So whether it's 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is, setting my little timer. And for that time, I'm observing myself. I'm observing my mind. I'm observing body sensation. Oh, I feel the breeze on my arms, but not where my shirt is covered. I'm feeling a tightness in my chest, feeling an ache in my lower back, and sounds like, oh, I'm hearing this. It's simply observing. And this is what I think the key is for all inner work, is to create a consistent habitual pattern of observation and awareness daily, because all of our inner work depends upon our ability to observe and see something and spot it. And the more fine-tuned my self-awareness is, the more, as my self-awareness gets more fine-tuned, I just spot subtler and subtler things. It's becoming where I feel a body sensation in a situation. I'm like, oh, I know what that's connected to. And I get curious, and I write it down or take a note or something. But it's really all resting upon my ability to observe and be aware, which I think is why yoga and meditation is booming so much in the world right now. That is observation and awareness of self. And when we have really busy minds, it takes some entertainment to observe and be aware.
Would you agree that the goal of meditation is not the absence of thought, but actually the conscious awareness of the thoughts going on in our mind and how we're feeling? And meditation is really just a conduit into our thoughts and our feelings.
There's nothing that messed me up more on my path than thinking meditation was making my mind silent. That really screwed me up for years of like, okay, I need to go sit down and make my mind silent, like trying to hold my breath, but in my brain. And all it made me feel was defeated, and that I wasn't doing it right, and that it wasn't for me. As soon as I switched to, no, this is just observing and being aware and using tools such as breath or sound or smell or sensation as tools to keep me present, that's still all observing. But when I switched to that is when everything changed for me.
So it's really like getting out of my mind is actually a practice of going into my mind and observing what's going on in there. It's not necessarily me like losing my mind and becoming completely absent of thought, but really just exploring what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and changing my life circumstances around that.
Here's the kicker. The receptive, the observing, that's the feminine energy.
It's the yin and the yang, right? I mean,
that's the yin, and the active mind is like the yang.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that as men, we can get really closed off to that receptivity of how we're feeling. We don't want to tell people how we feel or really express how we're feeling or listen to our feelings. So guys that might be experiencing that chapter in their life where they're just starting to explore their emotional experience and their emotional being, what are some practices or some resources that you might point these guys to? Maybe some particular books or something else.
So there's this one practice in particular that I learned it's everything, and a 5-year-old can do it. A 3-year-old can do it. It's called empty your bucket. And it's a practice of going through, and you can do it with yourself, but I recommend doing it with someone else. But it's you literally go through anger, fear, sadness, shame, guilt, joy. And you ask from one person to the other, Scott, what are you angry about? And then you would just reply, filterless, I'm angry about this. I'm angry about this. And every time you reply, I just say, thank you. I don't tell you how to fix it, how to make it better, what to do with it. I just say, thank you. And then I ask you again. And when I start to feel that you're running out, like I can sense your energy, I'm like, what's one, I can be like, what's one more thing that you're angry about? Or I can go to the next one and be like, Scott, what are you afraid of? What's bringing up fear for you? And just going through this, it's designed anger, fear, sadness, shame, guilt, joy very purposefully, because it's like peeling back the layers. Anger is usually, especially for men, on the, it's like what we show. And usually what's underneath it is some fear of something, loss or something happening. And under that's most likely some sadness. But this process being so simple, it's like a purge. It's like a purge when we speak. And even in the emotional intelligence books that are coming out, it's talking about how verbalizing and creating a more advanced vocabulary around our emotions is actually healing in itself. So that's the process I really recommend. There's what's the book that I just read that's so good? Permission to Feel. Woo! Super good book. Permission to Feel.
Yeah, like it's as if we need that permission as men, right? Somebody to just tell us that it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel low and down. It's okay to feel what you feel.
And it's so insane because it's happening regardless. And what we're seeing in the world and what's happening so much is just stuff it down, because it's not supposed to be happening. So let me pretend like it's not happening, but it's science. Like, we have all those things in us that create emotions, that are releasing those hormones, that are releasing those chemicals. Those emotions are happening. So yeah, we need that permission for our own health, for our own sanity.
Ian, what kind of problems do you see showing up when people are closed off to either the masculine or the feminine energy, and they're just avoiding that part of their human experience?
Let's start with feminine. I think what we see in the term, I was just talking to my dad about this, the term toxic masculinity is an imbalance. It's not balanced or able to access the feminine. So what's happening is emotions are energy, like everything. And when we're not expressing it, when we're not sharing it, when we're not moving it, that's energy building up. And something has to happen. Either an eruption, or I truly believe a lot of addiction stems from the lack of connection to the emotional energy. Because there's all this built up energy, and it's very like unstable and like shaky, because it's just like this energy bouncing around in the body with no place to go. So I think like in the unconscious ways is a lot of the anger we see, a lot of the volatility, the instability of so much reactivity, just something happens, like I've got to protect myself or fight you off or something. And I think a lot of the alcohol and drugs is suppression so that it's not felt. So that's what comes up for me around the masculine or the feminine, a lack of balance with the feminine energy.
We've been talking a lot about energy poles and the yin and the yang and opposing forces in the flow of energy. I would love to hear a little bit about what inspired you to go from being a man of the winter to a man of the sun, like of all things. I mean, I think you spent the last decade or so working commercial fishery in Alaska so you could snowboard full time in the winter, and you've made this complete transformation to a different lifestyle. Like, what inspired the shift, bro?
So like in a clear and concise way. There was a lot to it, but I had just read Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And I really was grasping that and focusing on subconscious work. And what he was talking about in that book was, if you really want to transform, if you really want to progress, it's important to, well, what he really focuses on, not starting your day connecting to yesterday. And that's what we do when we pick this up first thing in the morning. We connect to the people we know. We connect to the emails of things that we're already connected to. We're literally connecting to the past as soon as we pick up our phone in the morning. And it really hit me in a way that I was like, oh, I want to take this extreme. Like, I want to remove myself from everything familiar, my family, my work, my friends, my habits, my hobbies. So it was like, I purposefully wanted the extreme change of, it was my first winter not snowboarding in, I don't know how long, like 15 years, maybe. I think I only had one winter since I was 12 years old that I didn't go snowboarding. I think it was in my early 20s. So it was like 15 years ago that I didn't have a winter without, but I did get 2 days in last year. So I guess I can't say that, but I wanted to go in that extreme change of what my surroundings were, to see, kind of like a science experiment. Can I transform? Can I change? Can I evolve it into a new version of self?
And what has been the result, man? I mean, that what you've done is what most people fear. Most people fear losing everything they're attached to, right? Like, I fear losing my ability to go ski. I fear losing my laptop. I fear losing my job. I fear losing my wife. I fear all these things that are attached to me that create this identity of who Scott is. And you've gone here over the last few years and basically changed who you are. What's been the result, dude?
Well, I'll say it did not come without a lot of pain and displeasure. Like, my mind definitely, and my mind and my body definitely freaked out being removed from everything familiar. And there was three things that really led me, that will lead into the change. Is I really wanted to focus on scarcity and beliefs around money. I really wanted to work on feminine energy and my trauma directly in relationship to my mother and my father. My father carried a lot of feminine energy. And what was the third? Scarcity, feminine energy, drama. I was realizing how addicted I was to drama, because I grew up in a household that was fighting all the time. And my dad's been married 4 times, and there was always drama. My relationships became drama. TV's full of relationships with drama. So that was the third thing. I really wanted to, like, almost detox myself from drama. So those were the 3 things I focused on. And I went into each of them very, like, directly. And so what's changed in scarcity is my relationship with money is completely different. And my eyes are I pay much more attention, where I would say my reticular activating system, my attention was focused on scarcity before. So everything was like, how can I get the best deal? How can I spend the least amount of money, but get the best thing? How can I get the best? This kind of scarcity, I need to take and get the best deal kind of energy. And now I'm like, life's abundant. Like, I'm taking a breath right now that is showing me that there's so much oxygen in the atmosphere that I can just take a breath at any time that I want. That's abundance. And I'm like more so looking at the abundance instead of the scarcity. And the feminine stuff, like, I'm still on that one, but there's been a lot of change. That one's taken me really deep, and I'm still in that one. And drama feels really good because I now feel comfortable, whereas in that process, I didn't feel comfortable without drama. Now I'm feeling like I can just hang out and be okay and not, like, have that itch to, like, oh, no, something's not right. I have to go hang out with people. Like now I'm like, I want to go hang out with people instead of like, I need to go fill that void. I need to go, unconsciously get this interaction to feed me because I don't feel okay without it. So it's really like what's leading me to do things has changed a lot.
And you moved to Mexico, right? Somewhere in Mexico. I forget the name of the town, but what what was the name of the town? What was it like there, man?
Yeah. So in October, I moved to Todos Santos, which is just an hour north of Cabo San Lucas, which the southern tip of the Baja Peninsula. I went down for a sailing trip with a friend, and I had been working on my feminine skills, my feminine energy, and I had this feeling, I had this intuition that I was going to go live away for a while.
Hmm.
So when I went on the sailing trip, I had friends in Todos Santos, and I just brought all my things in a way like, all right, I might be staying here for a while. And it all worked out. I got it all, like, that place is magical, and the red carpet just rolled out, and it was really nice to be there. It was wide open spaces, and COVID wasn't really affecting there. Like I was still going to yoga, I was still going to music, to ceremonies, to healing experiences. I was still living a pretty normal life, surfing, swimming in the ocean. And I really went inwards. I just lived on a property by myself and spent most of the day either working on my business, working on myself, writing. And then I was able to get full by hanging out with a community like really quick. So it would be like, oh, okay, I'm going to go to yoga. And then that would be enough for a day or two,
Hmm.
But it was magical down there. I'm going to go back. I love it there. It's a powerful community of some really high conscious people.
I heard you say intuition. Like I just had this feeling that I was going to be there for a while, and I'm curious if your work, your journey into the feminine side of our energy experience has awoken a more powerful intuition inside of you, so that you're more of somebody that's guided by what you're feeling and your intuition rather than logic and science and analysis. And has that changed?
I really think that this may be one of the most important reasons for a man to open up more and be balanced, because what it becomes is an extra tool. Okay, we've got our mind. Our mind's really sharp. We've trained it a ton. And as I've been training my intuition, I've made some of the craziest decisions based upon how something feels.
Hmm.
Like my mind is literally telling me to do something else with the data, but I've been training and practicing leaning more into like, but what feels right.
Hmm.
And that is that feminine, like that receptivity of, and it's not really explainable to the logical mind because it's something just comes in. And I have a lot of experience this when I design my tattoos. It's like, I just have like a vision or imagery, or artists can maybe understand, or musicians. It's like something comes from somewhere and it appears in us in imagery or in feeling. So as I've opened up more, yeah, my intuition's insane. I just did something like 2 weekends ago that was one of the craziest things I've ever done, just in the fact that I just had this imagery come into my mind, and it was almost like it was a ceremony that I ended up doing with my father. But was doing this breath work, and I just got all this detailed imagery of a ceremony to do with my father. And the process of going through this this intuition practice is so entertaining because the mind is not down with it. Like the logical thinking egoic mind is just like, what? You want to do what? Or whatever the thoughts come up. But there's I wanted to plug this book at some point, and I think this is a good time for it. I read the book The Alchemist.
Ah,
And
brilliant
that
book.
really, opened me up to what intuition is.
When you read The Alchemist, was your experience of reading that book as if your life was unfolding with events that correlated very closely to what different pages of that book were sharing to you in that story? Because that was my experience, man. It was crazy.
Really, it just, I didn't know if I noticed it that detailed, but it just opened me up to really this conversation that we're talking about. It was just like, wow, okay, that makes it. Once again, it had to open the doors of making sense. And I was like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And I don't really read adventure books. I don't really read I really kind of just read informational books these days. But I love that book, and it really just opened me up to what they say it different in the book, but for me, it's become the language of life.
Hmm.
And now I listen. I just listen a lot more. I listen to, and sometimes it's through my sight, sometimes it's, through my ears, but it's like I'm paying attention to receive a lot more instead of always having my wheels turning and always thinking. I'm able to like spot subtleties and feel subtleties.
You you and I, we talked about meditation I don't know, 20 minutes ago or so. And you shared something with me a few days ago that you've experienced, I think, several of these 10-day silent retreats. And I think I put it down in one of my past notebooks many years ago to go experience one. I'm curious what that was like and what kind of insight you got from that and how that opened you up to more of your emotional body.
Man, good stuff. That's so good you brought that in. I forgot that was a big part of opening to feeling. That was a big part of getting back in my body, was the Vipassana retreats. Because, so for one, there's 11 hours of scheduled meditation a day.
So
And
110 hours over 10 days of meditating.
and three of those hours within the 11 per day are full hour chunks where you're doing your best not to move. You pick a posture and do your best to stay in that posture and observe body sensation and thoughts. Like that is Vipassana, is just like sitting, observing what arises. Pain. Oh, go into the details of what pain is. Oh, it's like a bubbling or a tearing or a pressure or whatever. Like getting out of the story of what it is. Oh, I think my hip's going to pop out of socket and the story about it or whatever, but just being with the sensation. The first time I went, man, what an experience. And it really tapped me into that body sensation because I'm not flexible. I haven't been flexible a lot of my life. I'm really working on it and trying to change that language. But sitting in the same posture for an hour for me in cross-legged or like sitting on my knees, you talk about body sensation. And then I had so much, I would say, shame of like something's wrong with me. My body's not the same as everyone's. So I had shame that I felt for the pain that I felt in my body. And I remember one of the sessions, it was like my whole insides were on fire. It was like there was so much anger and it felt like it was coming out of my hips. And I know the hips store a lot of emotional energy, but I felt like I was just on fire. I had so much anger. I could have like punched through like a, foot thick door. I felt like I had that much rage. But that experience was an emotional roller coaster ride, and just being with myself for that many days, I learned so much through feeling and observing. That's like the observation challenge, observe yourself for 10 days. You don't get to talk to anyone. You don't get to look at anyone in the eyes. You don't have your phone. Like it's just you with you experiencing you.
I'm curious what was one of the most enlightening learning experiences from that for you? Was it like a thought or a solution to some problem you'd been festering in for maybe months or years, who knows? Was it something else?
Well, the biggest thing is that anger that I felt coming out of my hips, that actually led me on a trail that is a thread that weaves all the way in today, because I really started to look at my trauma as a kid, where I had kind of pushed it away for a long time because I was involved in I was involved in masculine work for so long, and hearing people's stories of like what they had experienced in life. It was just like, oh my God, how have you experienced that? And it made me go, I have no issues. I have no trauma, because I heard that guy's story. I heard that guy's story. I heard that guy's story, and kind of just went, oh, I don't have trauma.
I'm not as
But
bad as they are.
right. Which is terrible for us to do to ourselves with our trauma. I learned. And so that fiery hip experience is actually what led me to really going into my trauma, a lot of the deep stuff that happened for me when I was young.
Ian, if I am looking to go deeper into this experience, where would you suggest I start? If I was saying, hey Ian, can you give me some homework? Are there books that I should read? Are there practices that I should implement? I mean, today we talked about the empty your bucket conversation, which sounds brilliant, right? I mean, what are you afraid of? What are you angry about? What do you feel shame of? What brings you joy? And just asking that until you feel empty of thoughts.
Right.
But what are maybe like 3 things that you may recommend that I or our listeners go and do so that they can begin this journey?
I believe that, for one, support is huge, and community. I do highly recommend. I think it's really important for men to be in masculine work, or in women to be in feminine. I think it's really important that we find that community and that entry point. So I think I highly recommend for men to find groups of men that are in similar paths. For one, to start there is like to not go at it alone, because going at it alone, now it's me versus all my subconscious mechanisms and all my patterns and all my behaviors by myself. That is like, not setting up for success.
Kind of like breaking that lone wolf mentality that since I'm the creator and curator of my problems, I should be the creator and curator of the solutions to my problems.
Which is just a subconscious mechanism for the most part to avoid going into anything. That's how tricky those things can be. I think a regular practice, number 2, a regular practice, Atomic Habits. I'll never get that information out of my brain. Just our habits are built through repetition across our lifetime, and habits can be built through repetition. So it's like a daily practice of whatever works for a person. If yoga attracts them more, great. If something like meditation attracts them more, great. Maybe it's walking, maybe it's skiing, but having something that's a regular practice of observation and awareness of self. It can be in all the different modalities, but it's like being intentional. And I think the subtlest details, like whether I set a timer for 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, that I have some sort of framework that's like, I'm observing myself for this amount of time. Creating that habit daily, I think, changes everything. And the third, I would say is really really getting connected to content that inspires in that direction. So it's like really learning about who the curators are that are leading mindfulness or self-awareness or whatever it is, like the authors, the speakers. if I'm going to, what I've really tried to do is change my feed on my phone so that it inspires me and it teaches me. So that I can still scroll and get my hits that I'm kind of trained myself to do. But I'm like seeing Joe Dispenza with a quote about neuroscience or like how the brain works, or I'm seeing a quick video from Tony Robbins talking about something motivational and whatever. It's like, but having a connection to and opening the doors to content coming in that is, and I know you're into this because you read so many books, is it's like having that content. And notice that I'm saying don't get rid of content. I'm saying bringing in content that inspires like understanding, learning, growth, expansion, so that if someone's watching Netflix, someone's scrolling through TikTok or their Instagram, like they're at least starting to build connection to people that are going to give them information that inspires them to go a little bit deeper. That's what comes to mind. Maybe that's not the best three, but that's what all feminine energy receive in my mind right now to share with you.
I think we can coin them the 5 C's of feminine energy. You don't know that you just dropped this bomb, but you did, dude. The 5 C's of really getting your energy and your emotional experience in balance or community, right? You got to have a good community. Consistency. You have to have consistently connect with your community and have a practice of doing something that brings you to a stable state.
Yes.
And then the last one that Ian shared with us was conscious consumption of content. Good stuff.
Nice. I like it.
Ian, what you're a coach, you're an event facilitator, you're a surfer, an awesome dude. Can you just tell me a little bit about the work that you're doing these days?
Yeah, it's interesting right now. I'm kind of holding both a more of a masculine energy in my business and a feminine energy, where I'm doing direct one-on-one coaching that's really focused on the subconscious mind. So really helping someone to learn their subconscious mind, observe their subconscious mind, and spot patterns and habits so that they can step into choice. So that's what I'm doing a lot with my one-on-one work. And now I just actually opened up my first group container that's called Revival. And this is a group that's focused on reinvigorating life, like bringing the vibrancy of life back into us. So that's in like the awe and wonder of, wow, this life, it's so magical. It's so miraculous. Like the fact that we even exist is beyond comprehension. So I'm doing both one-on-one work and group work right now.
Cool, man. If people want to learn more about your work and maybe they want to join the Revival community, so they can hit that first. Actually, that'll get you all 5 C's if you join the Revival community, I think, right?
Yeah.
Where could they learn more about that?
Yeah, I've got my website, eanwood.com, EANWOOD. Instagram handles the same, Ean Wood. Post a lot of content on there. And then my Facebook is follow Ean Wood. Boom. And that's where I'm putting out all my stuff right now.
Well, Ian, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to share some of your wisdom and insight on the topic of masculine and feminine energy balance. Our listeners, thanks for tuning in today. We'll see you back